Excellencies, ambassadors, diplomats, experts from capitals, participants from the permanent missions, and experts from capitals online and in person. Thank you very much for making your time to join us here in this side event, very important side event, entitled Gold, Crime, Conflict, and Fragility in West Africa and the Sahel, covering converting knowledge into evidence-based prevention and response frameworks. It's organized by Ghana and co-sponsored by Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, the African Union Commission, Switzerland, and the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador Felbert Johnson, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Republic of Ghana to the United Nations in Vienna, to give the opening remarks. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mohammed. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by thanking you for joining us today at this side event in the margins of the 32nd session of the CCPCJ. The theme of the CCPCJ, as you are all aware, is access to justice, safe and secure societies. Gold, crime, conflicts, and fragility in West Africa and the Sahel, converting knowledge into evidence-based prevention and response frameworks, is therefore an apt topic for consideration during this CCPCJ. The gold sector is a major source of income to the countries in West Africa and the Sahel. We have seen a significant increase in gold production in the region in recent years through both legal and regulated operations as well as illicit activities. The accompanying increased demand for gold and other resources is also fueling insecurity and conflict in the region, especially by non-state actors like insurgents, militias, and terrorist groups. The process obtained from such mining activities have been used to fuel criminal activities and conflict. Illegal mining of gold in our region has also had a significant adverse impact on the environment, especially as it relates to the destruction of vegetation and the pollution of water bodies. The phenomenon has further aggravated the existing problems many communities in the Sahel have with water scarcity and droughts. We have brought together a diverse panel of experts to assist us to better understand the challenges that we face in our region and beyond. The theme of the global initiative will take us through their latest research on gold, conflict, crime, and instability in West Africa. Officials of the African Union Commission, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources of Ghana, the University of Mines and Technology will also offer us their assessment and perspectives on the topic. In closing, I look forward to this discussion, which I hope will provide the CCPCJ with substantive insight for our deliberations into the difficulties our region is facing, including response to the multifaceted security challenges associated with the gold sector in West Africa and the Sahel. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. I think it's exactly 5 minutes. Thank you very much for that. I will now turn to the GI team presentation, which will be starting by Marcina Handler, and she's a thematic lead on extractives and illicit flows. And she will join us online from Australia. Marcina, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for having us, and thank you very much for that introduction. I am the thematic lead on extractives at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. And as part of that program of work, we have been conducting research on the gold sector in West Africa. What typically has happened is that narratives around the gold sector and crime have tended to focus on conflict financing. But as highlighted by the distinguished ambassador from Ghana, the reality is that the drivers and impacts of the sector go far beyond mine sites, both in time and space, and that the sector is a very important source of livelihoods across the region. And as was highlighted before, the importance of the sector and conflict and increased fragility is only going to increase as factors such as climate change put increasing pressure on the sector. So as such, in order to inform responses as well as prevention, it's important to have a much broader understanding and holistic analysis of dynamics in the sector. And this is really critical to the prevention of states as well as the region as a whole. So my colleagues today will be speaking about how factors such as the allocation of land and mineral rights, labor trafficking risks, how borders can present areas of vulnerability, and how state buying structures and policies can shape regional dynamics. And what we see is that in West Africa in particular, factors such as the allocation of land and mineral rights, issues around legitimacy and power, and transnational networks that easily traverse borders all play a role. And so in conclusion, and what we will hear from the Ghanaian government today is that responses really do need to be multifaceted and take into account the complex nature of the gold sector in West Africa. And so I hope that you find this panel today informative and instructive as we move forward to better understand the challenge and responses to addressing challenges linked to the gold sector in West Africa. So with that, I think I will hand it off to my colleague, Alice Faraday, to present her research on the topic.
Thank you, Marcina. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alice Faraday. I'm a senior analyst with the North Africa and Sahel Observatory at the GI. I will just provide a quick overview of some of the dynamics that are at play in Sahel, Saharan goldfields, and their links to illicit economies, in particular in Niger and Mali, which is where we have conducted recent research. Claudia, would you be able to show the first map, please? Thank you. So this will help illustrate, I think, my presentation. And I'll also provide a few of the key findings from our upcoming report on labor trafficking risks in Saharan goldfields. So we know that artisanal and small-scale gold mining plays a really central role in political economies and stability dynamics in the Sahel region. And the development of these goldfields in very remote areas of the Sahara-Sahel area has really had a significant impact on local economies, in particular, in a context where formal livelihood opportunities remain extremely scarce. And the boom in artisanal gold mining, which began around 2012 in this area, really triggered a massive rush of workers to gold mining areas. And it provided opportunities for trade and business to cater to this rising demand for food, water, fuel, vehicles, etc. But we also know that both licit and illicit markets have flourished in this context. One of the factors is linked to the geographic isolation, so to speak, of certain Saharan sites. So in particular, you can see on the map, hopefully, the gold mining areas of Chibarakaten and Jado in northern Niger, but also Tinzawaten in Guzar and in Taraka in Mali, where these areas sometimes lie beyond the reach of national authorities to some extent, and they can be areas where having a strong state presence is challenging, and the sheer concentration of workers in these areas have led some to emerge as nexus points for criminal routes and activities. Some are also actually located along historic routes, of regional trafficking routes, and they have linkages to these routes, but these routes and trafficking dynamics actually largely predate the gold rush, so they're not necessarily the result of the gold rush. Another key risk linked to these illicit economies is, of course, and it's actually received more limited attention, is the risk of exploitation and labor trafficking in these remote areas. So we recently conducted research in goldfields in northern Niger and northern Mali, which will be published in the coming weeks. We focused on Jado and Chibarakaten in Niger and in Taraka in Mali. And we assessed the risks of exploitation and labor trafficking by examining the modalities of recruitment and employment in these areas and the risks they pose to workers, but also the structural factors that contribute to the vulnerability of gold miners. I'll try and be very brief on the findings, but we did find evidence of practices that can be associated with labor trafficking. So based on forced labor in some cases, in particular in Jado and Chibarakaten. But these practices aren't really systematic across these gold mining areas. What we found instead is that there are key factors that exacerbate the vulnerability of gold miners to more complex exploitative practices and abuse that aren't necessarily clear-cut labor trafficking situations. Several of these factors are linked to the remote geographic location of gold fields. So the cost of travel, for instance, between major towns and these gold mining areas usually means that low-income prospective gold miners will travel on credit. They will then enter indentured labor agreements with their employers, and this makes them particularly vulnerable to exploitation. And the geographic location of these goldfields, combined with this really high demand for employment in artisanal gold mining, where there are very few alternative livelihood options, really makes gold miners quite dependent on their employers. And so therefore, again, this increases their vulnerability. However, these are dynamics that can be managed, and if they are properly managed, this gold mining boom in this area, rather than feeding into conflict and criminality and exposing workers to these risks of exploitation and abuse, could secure safe and sustainable livelihood options, of course, and also provide opportunities to boost tax revenues, contribute to stabilizing and really bolstering state presence in otherwise quite marginalized and isolated regions. And I think just to conclude, what this research has really contributed to realize is that there is the current situation at the moment, which is marked by growing efforts and advocacy to formalize gold mining and really harness its economic and development potential in this region, is a crucial opportunity for Sahel states. And so on that note, I will hopefully leave time for the rest of my colleagues to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alice, for this very informative presentation. I now give the floor to Dr. Gideon Ofuso Pisa. He's analyst at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, and he's joining us online from Accra. Dr. Gideon, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Please, can you show us the next slide? Good. So I'll be speaking on border security and how it links to trafficking, gold trafficking and other forms of trafficking, and then the issue of fragility, and then violence extremist activity. I would also want to refer us to a report that we've published on the Global Initiative website, that is Beyond Blood, Gold Conflict and Criminality in West Africa. And then we are also drawing from our broader work that we have done on illicit financial flows in West Africa. So on the issue of trafficking, for instance, if you are talking about gold, there are various drivers. So we are looking at issues around prices, differences in taxation and export tariffs, currency conversion rates differences, the issue about who pre-finances, and then where the gold would have to go to, issues around proximity and then transportation cost to market centers for the goods to be sold. And then issues, even what we are seeing in Ghana is that even issues around government policy, for instance, the gold for oil policy, for instance, all determines where the gold should go. And then these are what we are seeing that usually drive goods smuggling. As we all know, all forms of trafficking are also enhanced by the level of border security. So in Ghana, for instance, studies have shown that there are 44 designated entry points for migrants in Ghana. This study was conducted in 2019, but in actual sense, so there were more than 189 unofficial entry points on the Burkina Faso-Ghana border alone. But the study said that it was, 44, but on the Ghana-Burkina Faso border alone, it was 189. What we are also seeing is that there are socio-economic challenges which are coupled with some high levels of violence across the border in Burkina Faso. That makes areas in the northern part of Ghana, particularly the Upper East or Boko, vulnerable to various illicit economies. So we are seeing some illicit economies such as arms and ammunition smuggling. We are seeing illegal mining. We are seeing fertilizer smuggling. We are seeing fuel smuggling, cattle rustling, etc., which is happening especially around the Upper East region of Ghana. What we've also seen in Liberia is that since 2017, we are seeing the influx of Ghanaians, Malians, and then Chinese who are also exploiting gaps in the ASM sector in Liberia. And then what happens is that they enter through these porous borders, which are usually unmanned with the help of Liberian nationals, and then they work in the ASM subsector. They may come in as sponsors, and then when they arrive, they would have to pay bribes to traditional leaders just to be able to gain their informal consent to be able to mine and then also trade illicitly. We see that there is also weakness in border control. So what we see is that even in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic between 2020, so for 2020 to 2021, what we saw is that there was continuous cross-border flows of gold. So we see that along the Guinean-Mali border, and then from also some flows from Cote d'Ivoire to Ghana. Now, what we see is making some of these things difficult to be able to strengthen border control. For instance, if you look at the Mano River Union countries, is the free movement policy that they have. So it makes it very difficult for law enforcement to be able to track the movements of individuals within the region. And then when you regarding fragility, on your map, you can see some hotspots and then certain fragile areas. So in Niger and then Mali in 2017, what we witnessed was the border strip around Tillaberi and then the Tahar regions in Niger and then the Menaka region in Mali experienced one of the most intense forms of intercommunal conflicts. And then amongst these, the pastoral committees that they have. And then in 2019, it further escalated. And then when Niger outsourced security in the border area, to a Malian-based self-defense group. What we are also seeing in Cote d'Ivoire is that the area around the Como National Park is also a point of vulnerability. The park is known to have significant gold reserved, but on the Ivorian side of the border, there has been some spate of attacks on military posts since 2020, including those located in Kafolo and Kolobogu. And then what we are seeing is that the government is strengthening surveillance and eviction actions in an effort to combat illicit trafficking of gold. When it comes to the issue of border security and then how it links to violence extremist activities, in Ghana, for instance, there are concerns about porous borders and then weak community resilience, especially in the Boko area, and then which state authorities fear may contribute to some high levels of fragility, and they might be exploited by jihadists and then other criminal actors that may want to take advantage of the gold sector in the Upper East. In Burkina Faso, we see jihadist groups are controlling gold sites, especially in northern Burkina Faso, in the areas of Kusurugu, where we know they are under jihadist control. In northern Mali, we also see the same thing, that several gold mine sites in Kidal and then the Gao regions are also controlled by the CMA, which are elements of JNIM. And then what they do is that they take some unofficial taxes from miners so that they can access various locations, so that they can also provide them with security intent. So this is something that I would want to say on the issue of border security in West Africa and how it links with other forms of trafficking and then fragility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcina, Alice, and Gideon. And from their presentations, you see that how the illicit financial flows are like a major challenge in our continent. So the UN Economic Commission for Africa estimated last year that it's like Africa loses 84 billion dollars of the illicit financial flows, and gold is one of the most interesting and important issue here. I think we need to strengthen our legislations and also implementation, so we can make sure that it does not fall under the hands of organized criminal groups. And we have seen so many conflicts around the continent, and these kind of illicit financial flows, including golds, like fueling conflict in our continent. And Sudan is, the recent situation, you all know that's what is going on there. I would like to now play a video by Dr. Benjamin Arieh. He's advisor on mining to the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources of Ghana. Would you please play the video? Thank you very much.
His Excellency, the Chairman, distinguished participants, all other protocols duly observed. It is my privilege to present to you at this august forum a summary of Ghana government's approach to dealing with the challenges it faces with respect to management of illicit gold mining and trafficking. By way of background, gold is the prime mineral mined in Ghana, for which reason it was known as the Gold Coast prior to independence. The small-scale mining sector, or ASM as it is known, is a significant contributor. By way of production, it accounts for about a third of production and a significant contributor to forex, generating significant employment of some 1.5 million directly and up to 3 million indirectly as well. However, notwithstanding these positive impacts, it also has significant negative impacts by way of safety, health, and environment, impacts for both the operators and also the adjoining communities, to the extent that by 2017, it was regarded as an existential threat to the very survival of Ghana. In general, the relationship between ASM activities and the matter of crime has been noted to be one which is inverse. Inverse in the sense that when ASM activities increase, crimes such as economic crimes, violent ones like stealing, robbery, and even fights and other conflicts associated with livelihoods and smuggling tend to go down, and inversely. So livelihood and job creation is critical to the curtailment and management of crime in especially remote ASM areas where there is often very little in terms of alternative. Hence, government's emphasis on promoting viable, responsible, and sustainable livelihoods through the community mining scheme and a variety of other complementary and alternative livelihood programs, such as the recently introduced National Alternative Employment and Livelihood Program. I'll therefore look at some factors which have promoted illegalities in the ASM subsector and the way government manages these. Firstly, we have the absence of or limited access to land suitable for ASM activities. The way government is approaching this is twofold. First, by providing suitable areas through areas surrounded by large-scale mines for exploration, after their exploration, and secondly, collaboration between the Minerals Commission and the Geological Survey Authority to explore and find suitable areas for ASM activities. The second challenge is the absence or limited access to capital by way of both funds and human and technological capital. Government is managing this through directly or through facilitated support from development partners, financial institutions, and training institutions, as well as the provision of technical assistance to operators through its various agencies. The third challenge is that of the difficulty of securing the right to operate, that is, licenses. Therefore, the institution of an enhanced mineral cadastre through a portal which allows 24/7 online applications for and processing of licenses is the approach to managing this. The fourth challenge is the high level of fiscal imposition perceived on earnings by ASM operators. To manage this, government has been collaborating with industry associations to facilitate mutually beneficial consensual fiscal arrangements. For instance, the recent reduction of withholding tax from 3%, which was deemed to be onerous by the industry players, to 1.5%. This measure was also a way of addressing the smuggling which had peaked in 2019. The fifth challenge that has had to be dealt with is the general livelihoods uncertainty for mining community residents. And in this respect, government, in addition to the community mining scheme, which emphasizes community involvement both in terms of ownership and operation, is creating complementary and alternative livelihoods along with other partners. And the sixth challenge is that of weak parochial law enforcement, which is associated with various vested interests of various stakeholders. And to address this, government is focused on broad-based collaboration to achieve viable, responsible, and sustainable ASM activities. Examples of this include the ASM stakeholder forums of the 2021 and the ministers' engagement actively with all stakeholders across the value chain. The other ones one might want to emphasize are ASM activities, especially the informal or illegal operations, have an affinity to certain criminal activities, notably foreigner infiltration, smuggling, dealings in illicit drugs and arms, etc. And these are to be dealt with and have been dealt with so far, just like other criminal activities within the national security framework, and also as part of the drive to reduce, if not eliminate, the proliferation of small arms generally. So government in a way is pursuing these measures just to ensure that small-scale mining doesn't veer into the illegal mining sphere, but rather becomes regulated, formalized, and therefore sustainable, viable, and responsible. With this, I'd like to say thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benjamin, for this journey of the government of Ghana and its approaches and policies on the challenges of illicit gold mining and trafficking. I now turn to Dr. Ismail Quaker. He is coordinator, sustainable artisanal and small-scale mining, Hub University of Mines and Technology of Ghana is joining us online. Thank you very much for joining us in this very early morning. Thank you. You have the floor.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Please, are you able to share my slides? All right. Thank you very much. With all protocol duly observed, my name is Ishmael Kweku from the University of Mines and Technology. Currently the coordinator for artisanal and small-scale mining hub at the university, and we've been engaging in research into the supply chain dynamics of gold in Ghana and some part of Africa. So today I will highlight some few drivers that controls the supply chain dynamics in the country. If you could move to the next slide, please. All right. So briefly, Ghana's geological climate is very suitable. And as you could see from the map here, you could see that all the indicators on the maps are the various minerals that could be mined at the small scale or the artisanal level. And you could see the asterisk is gold. So as you could see from the bottom to the top, you could realize that it appears that we have gold mineralization all over the country. So it's not surprising that gold seems to be the primary focus in terms of mining, both at artisanal level and the large scale level. Briefly, in our laws, Ghana practice two forms of mining. According to our laws, we have the small-scale mining and the large-scale mining. However, in practice, research have shown that in practice, we have about 4 forms, which we could categorize them based on from artisanal, small-scale, medium-scale, and large-scale. And these forms are differentiated by several factors, which includes the level of investment, the level of technology, the land or concession size. In this case, especially in Ghana, according to our law, the small scale mining guys are given concession up to 25 acres, but the large scale goes beyond the 25 acres. In terms of level of production, behavior of people involved, and the supply chain dynamics. Briefly, when we take the behavior of people involved, especially the artisanal, they are people who are just looking for I call them the deliberate miners or the grasshoppers. These guys are looking for gold production from just a little below 1 gram to about 7.5 gram, which in terms in Ghana here, we call it a pound. And these guys do not need large concessions. They feed on already existing concession, or even they deal with waste. And in terms of technology, one may see that the artisanal guys only requires rudimentary equipment, such as hammers, such as chisel, and even just gold pan. And then they visit some site and start panning without necessarily giving regards to the environment or any institutional frameworks. Generally, in terms of gold output for the country, formally, there's large-scale, small-scale mine. A large-scale mine has been known to produce gold about within the ranges of 65 to 70%, whilst the small-scale mining, which includes the artisanal, the medium, and the medium scale, contributes between 30 to 35%. I must indicate here that the 30 to 35%, it is what is legally registered. So the ones that has been smuggled, I believe when we account all those smuggling goods or smuggling gold, this should shoot to about 40, 45% in terms of gold output. Please, can we move to the other slides? And well, so out of the research, we realized that in terms of the supply dynamics, when you take the large scale into consideration, you only have about 2 levels of supply chain. That is, the large scale miners have their gold. When they produce the gold, they ship directly to refinery, and the supply chain ceases. It goes from there. But in terms of the artisanal, the small scale, and the medium scale, they have about 4 levels of chains. So the miner mines, and then it goes to the bush buyer, which then translates to other levels before the exporter gets the gold and export it out of the country to other refineries. So they have about 4 levels in terms of the small scale. However, these dynamics in terms of the small scale is driven by some few indicators, which has been highlighted here. We have the chemical supply dynamics, mercury, cyanide, borax, and acid, which controls the market. Anyone who supplies this gold really have influence on the gold supply chain in the country. We've also realized the equipment supply, which the Chinese over the years have exploited this aspect, because over the period, Ghana's sector, the ASM sector, has been rudimentary, but the influx of the Chinese and other foreign partners had really been to exploited the equipment supply aspect, and that has really changed the dynamics over the period. Yes, the world market price had been a traditional indicator, but now, yesterday I was on the field and I was told that now they don't care about the world market prices again. It's more about who has the money and who controls the system. The exchange rate also plays a key role in the dynamics, because one of our research between Ghana and Burkina Faso realized that when they are safer, dollar exchange rate is high and Ghana cedi dollar rate is low, they tend to push gold to Burkina Faso. And when it happens that the cedi is high and the safer is down, there is a vice versa scenario also seen there. We also realized over the period that public holidays also controls the supply chain, because on public holidays is a bit difficult to access money from the banks and stuff. And therefore, if we don't have access to money in the system, anyone who has the money could come up with local prices that will change the supply chain dynamics in the country. We have foreigners also as well controlling the market in terms of gold buying and the supplying of equipment. And then the last item here is a government policy. Currently, government policy like gold for oil has really changed the dynamics. And I personally believe that if care is not taken, it might end up creating something sort of a gold cartel in the system, because some few privileged people are given the opportunity to do bulk buying for the government, whilst the main operators who over the period has been in the system had been neglected in the system. And therefore, that is what I see coming up in the system. Please, my last slide, and then I go. All right. So as part of the research, there are 3 main issues or trends we have seen coming up, both in research, in media, and all aspects. One is VAT cyanide leaching. Unfortunately, our government or our policies frowns on small-scale miners using cyanide leaching. But over the period, for some time now, based on our research, we've realized that this VAT cyanide leaching is increasing at a faster rate. And this technology was learned from Burkinabés, who through the northern borders, they infiltrate the country with this technology. And we've also seen gun proliferation. We have a couple of gun issues coming up in some of the mining communities. Recently, the military and the police task force arrested some people with a lot of guns and stuff. And we believe that is an issue that needs to, attention needs to be given to it, either than that, fragility within the West African borders and stuff. When some of these jihadis and stuff get into our system, they could exploit these weaknesses and then could create problems for us. And the last one I will highlight today is mercury pollution and health risk. Over the years, the miners have been using mercury, And recently, I think just 11th May, one of the senior most pathologists in the country indicated that out of his research, he realized that some babies born in some of the mining communities have some defects. And he believes that these effects could be associated with mercury pollution in other areas. And we can support these claims by some research we have also done. We did a bit of mapping of mercury concentration in some communities in the country, and we've realized that the mercury concentration in the soil in some areas, even some schools, are at higher rate relative to the world standard organizations criteria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ismail. And I think the academic research is important here. It will help policymakers to respond adequately to the issue. And I now give the floor to the participants in person and online for Q&A. So I open the floor if anybody would like to raise any question or comment for our panelists. Yes, please. Can you introduce yourself and your organization?
Of course. UNODC, Human Trafficking and Migrant Smuggling Section, Aline Pedra. It's just actually more of an inform. Burkina Faso has recently approved a plan of action against trafficking in persons. It was presented in a side event last Tuesday. And it's just, to share with you that it's a hope that the things will start getting better in the region as well, because we know that each country influences other countries in the Sahel. It's just to share with you this important information, because of course there are various activities that include targeting cases of exploitation in the mining sector, particularly of children.
Thank you very much. We have question. Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I would like to convey the government of Ghana as well as Nigeria. I think they are sponsoring this side event. I am the ambassador of Paraguay here in Vienna and permanent representative to the UN agencies. This issue of gold mining, illegal trafficking, and the impacts that this illegal trafficking is also affecting my country and also other countries in Latin America. My question is to UN agencies here present, as well as the representative of the governments that are participating virtually, and how the initiative are connected here in Vienna, are connected with the Minamata Convention. This is one question. And the other one, how UN agencies are supporting our member states in building strategies or national policies, not only in the with competent authorities in the area of security to fight illegal trafficking, but also in the area of health, because as we just saw, water quality is affected, but also environmental sector policies. So these are the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, UNODC and Ambassador of Paraguay. We have a last question from the online participants regarding the not clear-cut labor trafficking exploitation links to gold mining. Do you think we also look into sex work around artisanal mining sites? And I will give the panelists a quick few seconds to respond, so we can have we can make use of time. Before that, I give the floor to the Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Sudan,
Thank you very much. For the sake of time, I would like to start by saying that the experience of Sudan, we are facing the same challenge like the one in the Sahel and the West Africa. Also, for us, artisanal gold mining is directly related to the current crisis in the country. Also, it is connected with intercommunal conflicts, with the financing of rebel movements. Also, it has dire environmental, health impacts, and also on archaeological sites, and also on the discovery of other minerals, and also in changing the consumption patterns for the gold miners, especially ASM. And also we have a challenge in our bilateral relations with other countries, because we have ASM miners in countries as far as Mauritania, Algeria, and Egypt from Sudan. The biggest challenge for us is how to provide alternative employment opportunities for this men. This sector, our estimate is that more than 2 million are employed directly in this field. So the biggest challenge is how to provide alternative employment for them, and at the same time to find another livelihood, because they are coming from different sectors and different areas of the country, and the mining activity is not in their traditional areas. So most of the mining activities in these deserts where you have no specific community living there. So this is the biggest challenge also. So we want to share if there are any insights on how to address this biggest challenge, and also would like to kindly request the organizers to provide us with the slides, the presentations that has been presented. Thank you very much.
Ambassador, and we will definitely share the slides at the end of this. Please, you have the floor. Please be brief. Thank you very much.
I will be. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Brigadier Henny Flynn from the South African Police Service. We also have major challenges in terms of illegal mining. I would like to inform the House about the 2019 resolution on the transnational illicit mining and the combating of it. The full title is available, readily available. I would like to stress that it's critical now, as we are moving forward with the resolution, that within the next few months, we will get approval of the project plan on how to drive the process forward. And that will address a lot of the issues that has been raised here today. Because ultimately, we need to address this global phenomena effectively, so by addressing, obviously, both the supply and demand. And I believe there's common denominators throughout the world that's driving this illness of illegal mining, and then with subsequent illicit flows, and also large-scale money laundering that's taking place throughout the world. So I believe I've taken note for all the countries that's present and the comments that were made, and we will indeed keep in touch with all of you. And then obviously GI-TOC as well, that assisted us in the past with research in relation to the topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We will always be cooperative and working together. And I give the floor to the panelists to give like a few seconds to respond to the questions. Marcina, Dr. Gideon, and Alice, please.
Okay, thank you. I will quickly take the question with regards to the issue of sex work in gold mining areas. So yes, we are also looking into sex trafficking risks linked to gold mining areas. In Niger, for instance, seeing as we monitor very closely human smuggling and trafficking dynamics, in particular the northbound routes, we do know that this is something that does take place. However, in the gold mining areas in the far north of Niger and also Mali, women are not present on the sites. So actually this sex work and in some cases sex trafficking takes place in nearby towns, and in particular in the towns or the areas where the processing centers are. And that's where these dynamics can be concentrated. And that's definitely an area that deserves further research. And I could talk much longer, but I won't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we can go to the next speaker, which for closing remarks, Dr. Olibisayo Akinola. She's Principal Program Officer, Drug Control and Crime Prevention of the African Union Commission. She's joining us online. Dr. Akinola, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly observed. On behalf of Her Excellency, Ambassador Minata Samata-Sisoma, Commissioner for Humanitarian Health and Social Development of the African Union Commission, it is a great pleasure to be part of this side event on gold, crime, conflict, and fragility in West Africa and the Sahel, converting knowledge into evidence-based prevention and response framework. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, transnational organized crime continues to thrive in Africa, posing new challenges to international and crime control efforts, as well as the variety of emerging threats to the continent and beyond. Gold, crime, conflict, and fragility continues to evolve dynamically and has become more complex as criminals increasingly exploit new and emerging information communication technologies and artificial intelligence to perpetrate crime against humanity, especially on the continent of Africa. The consequences of illicit mining, illegal trafficking of the same, increased exploitation, illicit financial flows, terrorism financing, forced labor and abuse affect the socio-economic, political, cultural, and psychological state of the region. Gold, crime, conflicts, and fragility transcends all of Africa's 5 regions, some of whom are experiencing a meltdown of sorts due to its nuanced and complex nature. As such, research into the sector, including criminal networks and drivers of fragility, is critical to identifying entrenched and emerging challenges and to shape action, including evidence-based information that will effectively drive policy in the region. The African Union Commission's fundamental role remains to coordinate, monitor, and evaluate implementation, as well as to leverage technical assistance to member states through strategic partnership, as encapsulated in Africa's Blueprint for Social and Economic Transformation, Agenda 2063, which espouses the Africa we want to ensure the African Union's continued commitment to prioritizing sustainable development efforts by addressing crime, terrorism, and security in our member states. The Commission therefore underscores the need for the implementation of the African Union Plan of Action on Drug Control and Crime Prevention 2019 to 2025, the MIMATA Convention, the United Nations Conventions Against Transnational Organized Crime, and other instruments in a sustainable way. The AU Plan of Action prioritizes measures to address crime prevention and criminal justice reform, with emphasis on international cooperation on combating transnational organized crime, fighting emerging organized crime, such as cybercrime, rise in gangs, extortion, violence, and criminal governance. It involves continuous assessment of fragility and vulnerability and analysis of risk, pressures, and stress factors in our society. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the evidence from the presentations from our experts today emphasizes the need for a holistic, multi-sectoral, and people-centered justice approaches to effectively tackle gold, crime, conflict and fragility in West Africa and the Sahel, and in the continent of Africa as a whole. The African Union is therefore pleased to reiterate its unwavering support to enhance intra- and interagency cooperation and collaboration to effectively tackle transnational organized crime in line with international conventions. The Commission is set to strengthen effective, impactful, and inclusive policies to combat crimes of all forms that has continued to plague the continent and strengthen its crime prevention efforts while ensuring a holistic criminal justice reform and the rule of law in Africa. As I conclude, I want to thank the many partners who have consistently believed in our vision and provided technical and financial support for the implementation of the AU Plan of Action on Drug Control and Crime Prevention. It is therefore our sincere hope that the evidence before us will serve as an impetus for the Africa we want and effectively drive policy to provide a lasting solution to effectively tackle transnational organized crime. And on this note, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akinola. This is very interesting. And for the questions online, please, you have to provide your email for our experts so they can reach out to you and you can have an answer to your questions or comment if there is any comments. Finally, I would like just to give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador Philbert Johnson for a final remarks. Thank you.
We have limited time. I won't speak for long. I am very grateful to all of you for participating in this side event. It's an important topic that we've discussed. The impact and importance of this event is for us to therefore fashion appropriate responses to deal with this menace, which is not only affecting our continent, but affecting other regions and creating criminal gangs all over the world. And so I would end by saying that the relevance of this event is the responses that we put to address this menace. I thank you all for coming, and I hope that we would all deploy efforts to address this matter. Thank you.